Welcome to the Reprofiles, where infertility meets injustice and nothing is off limits.
We're two nurses, we're certified reproductive health advocates, and we're here to tell you everything they didn't.
From the broken systems to the heartbreak left behind, we're here to connect the facts, the policies, and the pain.
Because silence isn't safety, and we're done being quiet.
This is the Reprofiles.
Infertility, injustice, and all things nobody warned you about.
Hello, all. Hi, this is Anne Marie. I am your friendly neighborhood fertility nurse back here with the Reprofiles. And today we have guests. We have guests that are founders of Cove Family, Allie and Jenn, two women who have spent years navigating infertility, and they offer private support so people can access in real time. Can you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your story and what led you to founding Cove Family?
So I come to Cove after my own infertility journey. I have diminished reserve, and I had one of those sort of textbook unfortunate kind of journeys where I had expressed concern about my fertility to my gynecologist in my mid 30s, and she said, I mean, honestly, apropos of nothing, right? Because she did no testing, and she just assured me that I was fine. It's fine. You're fine. And so, I waited another couple of years to try to have children. We sort of lived our lives. 35 in New York is a pretty regular age to even begin trying, or even, a lot of people here try well into their 40s. And so, with my gynecologist saying everything is fine, I took her at her word. I wish, sort of in retrospect, that I had pushed for some investigation, at least had her run my AMH, which she did not do. And I had this conversation with her, several times at my yearly kind of for a number of years. And she just continued to say, like, no, everything is fine. And so, we had planned a wedding for 2020, which of course was canceled and rescheduled and canceled and rescheduled from COVID. Once we finally were able to get married in September, we had a lovely, just the two of us and two best friends elopement in Brooklyn Bridge Park in the end, because it just was such a crazy year. But we started trying immediately after that, and lo and behold, my AMH is 0.1. And so we went directly to the RE. We did not really pass go. I mean, we sort of continued to try while we were waiting for our treatment workups and those sort of things. But it was always kind of a given that I am super infertile. So we did the couple rounds of IUI. They were, of course, unsuccessful. We did a couple rounds of IVF. They were also very unsuccessful. I had poor response. Allie probably remembers better than I do, but I think at one point I had like 2 eggs, and that was sort of a celebratory number for retrieval.
Yeah.
And of course, none of them even made it to blast. We had insurance coverage for our 3rd cycle, but we didn't even bother trying to use it, and we went straight to donor conception. We matched with a donor and were very, very lucky to conceive unassisted while we were waiting for our donor to cycle day 1. So I
Wow.
had
Okay.
Mhm. The dream, I guess. But I had obviously a very anxious pregnancy, and that's sort of a story for another day and not really why we're here. But, we are happy to have welcomed him in March of 2023, and he's now 3, and that's that. But sort of in all of that kind of negotiation between starting treatment and the diagnosis, I sort of immediately started looking for support because I really am a joiner and I want to connect with people who are going through the same thing. And, also at the same time, my best friend was trying, and she is also my age and conceived right away. So I think when you're in those kind of situations and sort of navigating that right off the bat, I really did want a network of people who kind of got it and could understand why I was so upset by that, even though I was so happy for her, and just found really the existing support options to be lacking. I tried our local Resolve group immediately, and Resolve does incredible and, very important work, and has in this world for 20 years. Their policy and advocacy work is invaluable to people in this space, myself, of course, included. But I was not really prepared to sort of meet these people I didn't know and start telling this very emotional story live, right? And then also there were sort of some very right off the bat kind of personality fit concerns about that group. And so in that process, I found another group, and I found Allie, and really made a best friend. She is here with me today, and we are very, very close. And it just was such a beautiful experience that I think there exists another sort of path to support for people navigating infertility that is not face-to-face meetings. And kind of now on the other side of this, we are really wanting to build that for people.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that patients are wanting that more and more now as well. Yeah. How about you, Allie?
So I'm Allie Moise. I'm the other co-founder of Cove Family Co. Our main product is called Cove Collective. And I met my husband in college. We got married while we were still in college, possibly to the, I don't know, consternation of our parents for no reason other than the audacity of youth and love. We waited until we were 26 to start trying to have a baby. We were 26, had audacity and youth on our side. And we really thought that um, we would have a baby, be pregnant within 3 months. A year goes by, 2 years go by. We're now like, okay, this is really not happening. Started doing the workups with our OBGYN. I did several rounds, 6 or 7 rounds of Clomid and Letrozole. Nothing there. We transferred to an RE, did that workup. We were still unexplained. We did one IUI on Christmas Eve in 2021, which gave us some light positives for about 2 weeks. And then beta day came and it was negative. And that was crushing. And that kind of short hope that we had really led us to pursue IVF, where we decided if we were going to put our hearts on the line like that, we wanted some better odds. So we went into IVF. We had really good results with our one and only egg retrieval. We got plenty of embryos on ice. Enough came back PGTA normal. At this point, our mindset was very much like we're leaving nothing to chance if we can. We did our first embryo transfer and it took, and it resulted in our son, who was born 6 weeks before Jen's in January of
Wow.
2023. We had this very kismet moment where we got to experience treatment and pregnancy and now parenting in parallel. And then, like Jenn, I was also just looking for people who got it. We were the first of our friend group to start trying to conceive. So, infertility wasn't on anyone's radar. Babies barely were at all. And then another friend of mine recommended a Reddit subreddit, and that's where we connected, which is still so funny to me because I have this image of like who's on Reddit and it's not Jenn,
Yeah.
but we grew this really lovely community from it, and now we have this group of women that we talk to all the time. We've gone on family vacations together, we've watched our families grow, and we've seen that through line not only through treatment but also into pregnancy with infertility and then parenting with infertility, because I do think there is this like baseline layer of anxiety. And of course, the stakes feel high for everyone, but they do feel different when you've paid $30,000 just to get pregnant in the first place.
Mhm.
And so having these women kind of by my side throughout it who continue to understand the unique mental stress of it has been invaluable and genuinely life-changing.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Reddit, the Reddit forums and how you guys met. I actually joined a couple of Facebook boards just because I wanted to get a feel for what are people talking about? What are patients' biggest concerns? What do they need? What are they feeling? What all of that? It's kind of a little scary on some of those boards. Like it's really concerning, so much concerning that I've actually reached out to a couple of people directly going, yikes, hey, I'm a fertility nurse. Can I help you with any, kind of situations? But this is where your company is very different, right? So you guys have these two different tiers that you provide through your company. Can you tell us a little bit about what each tier entails? And what people can expect from each of those communities.
So we have two different tiers. One is kind of basic access to the community. You know, maybe you don't need a lot, but you just need to know that you're not alone in this.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone to pop in occasionally and talk to. You're probably a good candidate for what we call our connection tier. And that has more limited access channels wise. And I guess I'll say Cove Collective is an app. It is a members only app, and it is structured to function kind of like an organized group chat. So this is all text based. And then there's different channels based on the conversation topic. And that can range from everything from your pets and recipes and, Bravo TV through to different types of fertility related treatment. So whether you're going through IUI or IVF or surrogacy and donor conception, there's a space for kind of every part of the journey. So we have the connection tier, which is kind of a good entry point, especially maybe if you're more introverted and you prefer to just kind of have more passive company. If you're looking for a more tailored experience, we have what we call the community tier, and that gives you full access to the channels. You also take an onboarding quiz that will kind of custom build your sidebar within the app if you're interested in topics like faith and fertility, or if you are LGBT, or if you have a history of recurrent pregnancy loss, that will be tailored within the app as well. And then there's also a option to participate in a one-on-one, like infertile bestie matching program. So if you're really wanting that really high touch kind of experience, but with the convenience of an app and the convenience of social media, then the higher tier is the best fit.
Awesome. No, that's great. I think people can kind of explore and say, "Hey, do I really want to kind of go forward?" And then they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm all in. I want a one-on-one bestie, my fertility bestie to go to." And I think that's important that people have that support because they may not be getting it anywhere else. Fertility is such a private thing. Many people don't want to talk about it. They keep it to themselves. They don't even tell their families. I've had many patients who were like, I'm not even telling my parents. I'm not telling anybody anything. So it can be a very private, but that's also very isolating. The whole journey can be very isolating because they don't want to tell anybody, even though fertility, is 1 in 6, right? It's one
Right.
in
It's
six.
super common.
Yeah, and yet we feel like, "Oh, we have to hide it," and there's some sort of stigma attached to it. So, I think it's a great way to kinda get involved and start talking to other people who are experiencing the same thing as you are.
Yeah, and
That's
and I
great.
think one of the reasons we designed this way. I mean, we as you noted have years of experience in infertility communities at this point, so we have a good sense, I think, of what kind of works and what doesn't, and what's valuable
Mhm.
and what isn't. And one of the reasons that we designed so intentionally this way is that we understand that people are coming to this journey. We were just talking a little bit more about this morning with the hope that they won't be in an infertility community for long, right? And so kind of with that, we have developed these two tiers so that if you just want to check in and you are really hopeful that this next IUI is going to be the one and you want someone to hold your hand for the wait, through the wait for beta or whatever the case may be, the connection tier is perfect for that because you at least have some company to kind of walk you through the next 2 weeks or 10 days, right? If you are maybe newly diagnosed and you expect that your treatment course may be a little bit longer, the community tier may be a better fit because there's a little bit more longevity and you can kind of build some more of those relationships. So that kind of intentionality was really important to us as we built the app, really having an understanding of what people are wanting and needing in that community space. And then, sort of to touch on some of what Allie had said before as well, we do also have kind of gated access to what happens after the positive test, right? Because for a lot of people, that time can feel very tenuous and still very stressful and still is a time of high emotional need. And so, we have gated areas for if you get a positive pregnancy test, but you are, in that period where you're maybe still being monitored by your RE, waiting to see what happens. We want our members to know that that area also exists for you, but it is hidden sort of in its own kind of little cove, as
Mhm.
you might say, so that it's not out there every single day that you log into the app and you're seeing, what did somebody's outcome be.
Mhm.
So again, it's just sort of like we designed as intentionally as possible to really support the full course of treatment for a good number of outcomes or timelines, but really with a lot of sort of thought to everyone's real experience of infertility too.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, being on the boards, on the Facebook boards that I see, when someone does get a positive, they don't know where to go. And they ask and the boards are like, "Hey, is there a group that I could go to? Like an infertility group? I'm positive pregnancy." But of course, the people are like very congratulatory, but then, you know, other people don't feel the same way. Right? They don't feel the same way. So, I like how, they still have that support going forward, because not just waiting for the beta, that's a long wait. Like
Yeah,
those 2 weeks or 10 days or
the
whatever you
longest.
have
It's
to
the
wait.
longest,
It's like,
right?
right? It's like, what do I do with myself for the
Mhm.
next, many days? And I'm just like, as a nurse, I was always like, well, I can't tell you to not think about it because that's not going to happen, right? Just
Right.
try to keep yourself busy. What other thing can I tell you? Be busy, read a book. I don't know, run out. And it's just, not there. So I'm glad that you have that space for people who can kind of collaborate and be like, oh my gosh, I'm still waiting and all of that. And after that positive, it's nice because they still need support. They still need to go forward and do all of that. Do you see that there is a changing out there looking at everything? Do you think that there's like this big change in fertility support? Do you see that? Or do you think women are and couples actually in general, not just women, but couples in general, do you see that wanting that change? And what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that Jen and I talk about frequently is that the landscape of fertility treatment and need has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, but the support structure for it has not. So, people are more online, they're more busy. Kind of legacy options for support just aren't as attractive, even if they are available. People don't want to. I guess, Jen, I can let you jump in, but you talk about like the Zoom after work on a Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, like, nobody wants to be on Zoom all day, and then you log on to your support meeting to, like, cry in front of strangers also on Zoom. I mean, it's horrible, like, so, we really and the data supports that, right? So there is data that infertility patients do want support, and they prefer it to be virtual, and they prefer it to be text-based, and so we really saw a need for that, and that's really why we're here, because we experienced that too, right? And even kind of going back to what happens during the 2-week wait or your wait for beta, you try to keep busy, but how, right? And when your support meeting is a week away or whatever the case may be, you are just looking at all this time to fill. And so one of the things that we sort of are one of our goals in designing our community is to make it be support that's actually fun or pleasant to use. So we would hope that people form enough connections that they want to spend some time there chatting about what they're baking or what hobbies they're doing, cheerleading one another when they share drawings that they worked on last week, or even just talking about their pets. I think kind of having that community that understands there's this baseline of anxiety running beneath all of what you're doing for the next 10 days, but you also do want that company or the distraction, play a game, whatever the case may be. Our goal is for our community to be there for you in those times.
So I think sometimes that clinics are trying to create their own support groups, right? They're trying to get that engagement. But what do you guys think about fertility clinics and what they get right and what they get wrong in terms of like a patient experience?
I mean, I can speak from my own experience that, I felt like I got excellent care while I was in clinic, but
Hmm.
between appointments, it was essentially nothing, which is how I ended up on Reddit. And social media is great because it's accessible and it's free, but you also don't know who you're getting advice and support from. Jen and I were actually catfished by someone we thought we were
Fully
friends with,
catfished, like, not
fully
just
catfished.
not just we, like,
Yeah.
chatted to this person once, but for months.
2 years,
Yeah, like,
maybe?
a very
Like,
long
years long.
Wow.
Reddit is the
Yeah.
wild west, like, it's truly the wild, wild west. So even when you're getting when you're talking to someone about their results, right, on Reddit, and you think, "Oh my goodness, she had such good results. I hope that that protocol can get those same results for me." You have no idea who the person on the other side of that is. One of sort of our safeguards is that people are encouraged to use Cove as privately and anonymously as they prefer. So you are welcome to use a username if you prefer just that added level of privacy for yourself. But on the back end, we do see that these are actual real people. People ask why our service is a paid service. And one of the reasons is so that it can be stewarded, so that there's someone taking real ownership and accountability over what happens in the group, but also so that people in the group have a little bit of buy in, right? so that they're registering with their actual name, and we are seeing that there's an actual person on the other side of this, and it's not just whoever is on the other side of the keyboard on Reddit.
Wherever they
Yeah,
may be,
right.
who knows where
Exactly.
they're living, what their circumstances are. I mean, I've seen Catfish the show enough times to
We were
Yeah.
know.
shocked. We were
And
shocked, and it was
How
yeah.
did you find out? Like,
so
how did it all go
this
down?
is, I mean, I guess every possible trigger warning for this space, but this is someone that, and for all we know, she may have genuinely gone through treatment, but she pretended to have a successful pregnancy from, I've shared with us that she lost her twins at 28 weeks. And while we were trying to find someone in her real life, like a real friend or her spouse to
So that we
contact
could
so that we
provide
could
support.
send
Mhm.
support offline because, we could only imagine how challenging this time was for her. And that's when we came across her real life profiles and realized that the entire pregnancy was fabricated. Yeah. So genuinely shocking. It was a huge betrayal of trust.
Yeah. So what did you approach her about it? Did you call her out
She
on it?
blocked us all immediately. Yep.
But
So,
we behind all of this too, though, Allie and I are so deeply sensitive to the emotional landscape that informed those decisions, right? Like, this
Mhm.
is someone who very clearly, desperately wanted a pregnancy, and we understand that.
Mhm.
So I get it also on some level.
yeah, I think in hindsight, we have a lot more empathy for, what she must have obviously been struggling with to even fabricate this story. But, it's something that tough lessons learned a hard way that, we've now built safeguards into Cove because we want to make sure that people feel safe bringing their authentic experiences and knowing that they're getting support from women who are equally authentic in their sharing and their support.
That's an incredible story. Was this before I guess this is before you started your company, before you started Code?
Yes. Yeah, this
Okay.
was several years
So
ago
and that
now.
was probably a very influencing part of why you do things the way you do.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that totally
But
makes sense.
even beyond like the internet stranger danger of it all, one thing that we're hearing a lot in our conversations with fertility nurses and with clinics in general is that patients are turning to AI chatbots now
Mhm. Yep.
for emotional support between their appointments. And, while that might be more safe in some regards, we all know that ChatGPT is not infallible and that it doesn't always give good advice. And so there really is this need for human connection that does have boundaries because infertility treatment is medical. And so, Jen and I, we don't pretend to be medical practitioners. We very much are not. We are not healthcare providers. Always listen to your doctors, your therapists, et cetera, first. But we have lived through it. So, we have the experience to say, hey, that sounds weird. You should call your nurse line or even just really practical advice like remember to start your colace
Mhm.
for your egg retrieval
Right.
because there are practical things that sometimes get lost in the shuffle on the clinic side. And so that's where the peer support aspect really was beneficial for us.
I
And
think, yeah, tips and tricks too. Lots of tips and tricks that you
yeah.
have about injections and things like that.
And I wanted to kind of return to your question also in that, I felt a lot of support from my nurses when I was going through IVF, right? Like they were an incredible resource, both medically and for emotional support, but it's really not their role, right? And it's is so valuable, I think, to have people outside of the appointments and in between appointments that you can kind of debrief with so that you're not spending all of your time crying in your endocrinologist's office, as I very much did. Um, and then I think too, it's not necessarily a given that your nurses fully understand infertility or have been through it themselves. And so, as empathetic as they may be, and many of them, of course, are just so amazing. All of them, of course, are just so amazing. But it's good to really kind of check in with a community that actually does kind of get it emotionally when you have a failed cycle.
Yeah. I totally understand, coming from that. I always would sit on the phone with my patients as long as they needed to be. spoken to, or just sitting there listening to them, even if they were just crying. Oh, I'm not going to hang up on this person. I've actually been told by physicians, why are you on the phone that long? There's no reason to be on the phone that long. And I'm sorry.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, but no, I'm not hanging up on this patient. And that's just that. But, it's difficult for me. I did not go through any infertility treatments. So I don't have that experience to share with my patients. Elizabeth, she has gone through the process. So she has a little bit different perspective than I do. So I think that absolutely having a support system of people that share that experience is very important. So I
Yeah.
think definitely it's that.
And it allows the nursing team and the medical team to do what it is that they do best, right? When we are providing some kind of backup on the emotional side.
Yeah.
It's something that we've talked to a lot of therapists and psychiatrists that
Hmm.
focus on women's mental health. And something that we've heard from them is that their fertility patients are coming to their session and spending a lot of time just venting. And that's eating up their session time in a way that's limiting the therapeutic work that they're able to fit in. So, something that we're hoping to offer with Cove is get some of that venting out with us.
Hmm.
And then you can spend your 50 minutes that really matter with your professional doing the deeper work.
Yeah. That makes sense. That totally I have gone into my therapist's room and just vented for an hour, and I'm like, wait, where did the time go?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
wait, I need more time because we got to
Hmm.
figure some stuff out. But time is up. So like, totally get that, sharing that. What do you think? What do you think as fertility clinics? What can fertility clinics do better for patients as far as like their mental health goes? Because some clinics are attached, excuse me, are attached to a therapist, a counselor, things like that. What are things that we as fertility clinics and fertility nurses and providers, what can we do better?
I mean, I think we view ourselves as complementary to that work, right?
Mhm.
And so, I think for us, we are more than happy to kind of be that additional layer of support that patients need through this process. I think the nurses and doctors do what they do best very well is really, I think, all I can say. I don't know if Allie has anything to add.
Yeah, I would say, I think my experience was that I was maybe given like a resource sheet at my first consult, and that was kind of that. And then, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of mental load that goes into fertility treatments. And I probably never thought about that resource sheet again after that. So
Yeah.
I think even just basic check ins,
Mhm.
especially when you're heading into something like stims for an egg retrieval, a time that's like really fraught and your hormones are whacked out, intentional check ins, just like how are you doing beyond the physical symptoms and side effects?
Mhm.
And do you feel like you need more support in a holistic way? And even if the outcome of that is just resharing the exact same resource sheet, it's just that kind of extra touch point that I think could be really beneficial.
Just keeping that relationship open.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful because at the beginning, it's so overwhelming.
There's
Mhm.
so much
It's
information.
so overwhelming. And then you're right. I think you kind of never look at those resources again. But having a check in kind of at various treatment stages is
It's good to hear from a patient perspective. I think just hearing you guys say that, because I'm the ones that was handing out that resource paper, right?
Right.
And then people asking me questions, and I'm like, it's on the paper that I gave you.
Right. Honestly, or even, now that we're business owners, we're like learning about all these back end systems. Send an automated email
Mhm.
after
Mhm.
somebody's consult, like, 2 weeks later, that here's a link to our resource sheet.
Yeah.
A
No, I
lot of
think
this
that's
stuff doesn't
great.
necessarily have to be a heavier lift on either the clinical or the admin team.
So we talked about AI a little bit earlier. So what are your thoughts? I know that a lot of clinics have a portal system, right? They use the portal system. They're starting to utilize AI to answer questions, like basic questions. What are your thoughts about those type of communications with the clinic?
I mean, I guess I don't know enough. My hesitation is very much like how fact-based are the particular AIs? Is the AI just repeatedly telling someone, "Call the nurse helpline, sorry, can't help with that"? Because if that's the case, that's not really very beneficial. I do think that there's value in AI. There's a lot of concerns about it as well. But I do think it has its use. And I think to Jen's point earlier, if it allows the clinical team to do what they're trained to do, more thoughtfully and deliberately without kind of side tasks, then I think that that's a useful tool. But I think it all comes down to implementation and to the specific models and how reliable they can be.
So, I was thinking about AI and how it can be utilized because I know patients, they lose sleep during their journey, right? They can lose
Hmm.
sleep. So they're at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're on their phone, they're doom scrolling, and they come across something, and then they can maybe perhaps ask a question. But, when they ask a question online, Dr. Google, as I like to call it, but now like Dr. Chat GPT now, because Dr. Google's old school now, but they can spit out all these answers, but then it kind of gets people spiraling into another rabbit hole. So,
Been there.
as yeah. So with Cove, do you guys have support that people can go to on your app 20?
Yeah, I will say that we're very early stage, and so it's
Mhm.
the two of us who are serving as active moderators of the community. But yes, people can post at any time, and I do think that what they're looking for in those moments is not necessarily an answer to this question, right? They are looking for support, emotional validation. They are looking just to hear someone say, like, I hear that this is concerning to you, and I totally get it. I've been there and this is how I experienced it, or I haven't been there, but I can understand why that's so upsetting to you. And as helpful as AI is, it's not really a replacement for a friend, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's something that we really experienced. I think AI can't, or at least hasn't, in my experience, replicated joy and the real relief that comes from meeting someone who just understands. And I think Allie and I have this very sweet mutual memory of the moment that we met. And it was a virtual meeting, right? So we were meeting
Hmm.
in a chat and we were just like following each other around, like, oh my gosh, you're into this. Oh my gosh, you're into this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
It was not, I mean, our fertility journeys have been very different, right? Um,
Mhm.
we cycled at the same time, and I got 2 eggs and 0 blasts at the same time that she had a very successful cycle, and, that was difficult, but part of the benefit of having a text-based relationship is I could be, like, celebrating her and crying, and no one was the wiser, right? Whereas if
Right.
we were, like, on Zoom, she would know that I'm crying through this congratulations, and
Right.
again, that experience is so valid, but being able to do it from the privacy of your couch is also so invaluable. But I think that sort of joy that comes from really meeting someone and connecting with someone, not something that actually gets it and is responsive, right? Like she could send a meme back to me and maybe GPT does that too, but I think it's irreplaceable.
Right.
There's also something just, humans crave human connection. And even hearing about, Jen's cousin's best friend had an egg retrieval that was similar to mine and it resulted in a live birth. Like hearing those human stories matters and means so much more than a statistic from ChatGPT that says, you retrieved X embryos. That means that you are likely to have, you know,
That you have
this
this
many children.
percentage. Yeah, you
Yeah,
have this many percentage of blah
exactly.
blah blah. Yeah. No, I think
So
story.
one data point can really mean more when it comes
Mhm.
from somebody that you know and you trust.
Yeah, totally agree. What do you think is the biggest anxiety provoking thing going on in the infertility world right now? Like what are people talking about a lot?
I
I
mean,
mean,
I think it's plain that Roe and the termination landscape has such an impact on how people seek treatment and where they're able to seek treatment and what that looks like. I think decisions in this space are already so fraught, right? There is so much pressure. Like these are people who very desperately want babies. And I think it is a real tragedy that this changing landscape has so much impact. On how people are able to make those decisions about building their families. And, it's also it just gets sort of logistically complex too, right? If you are a patient at a clinic that has multiple locations and then they want to send you for retrieval to a different location, you don't totally have control over that. But that means you're building embryos potentially somewhere you didn't plan for. And so there are just so many considerations that are ongoing. And I think it is really difficult. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know, Allie.
Yeah. And I mean, even post, I'm post treatment, our family is complete. But Jen and I were just talking about this morning, actually, that I still have embryos in the freezer.
Mhm.
And I'm not quite sure what to do with them. We do feel like our family is complete, but we also live in the South. And right now, our state is safe or, safe
Mhm.
in that respect. But I have thought about like moving them to a long term storage facility in a friendlier state while we figure out what our next steps are. So,
Yeah.
I think one thing I did not anticipate going into infertility is the longevity of it. We started trying for a baby in early, about this time of year in 2019. And here we are, 2026. And it's still something that I think about daily, even though our family is complete.
Yeah. And who knew? People didn't know, like, when the whole Alabama decision came down
Hmm.
and IVF just stopped in the state of Alabama, and I think that really opened up eyes to a lot of people of what laws that were intended for one thing are actually impacting,
Hmm.
other things like IVF. And I think it is important that everybody be aware of what's happening, and what's going on, and just figuring out how to navigate that. I think you're right. I'm in Florida, so I totally get the whole in the South kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
So I understand that as well. So, do you guys have any men that are members?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Not at the moment, but, this is something that we, again, like, thought very intentionally about as building, and so one is we do want our group to be open to and feel comfortable welcoming, men who, are family building in any way, and
Mhm.
we also have thought about providing resources, our own partners were very supportive throughout our
Mhm.
journeys, but didn't have support of their own. And I think, of course, that's something that is really, really lacking. And two, didn't always know how to show up for us either. So, I think like for a good example, when my best friend announced her pregnancy and I was really struggling with this, my husband's take was, why aren't you happy for her? And his sort of emotional bandwidth for understanding that I was, and also somehow
Devastated.
devastated, right? Um,
Right.
and I think that was hard for him to understand. So, one of the things that we've thought about is even just offering like a one off kind of sensitivity training for partners partners are members of Cove. They can just drop in for a one time sort of meeting, like, here's how you show up for your partner because maybe no one's told them, right? And the experience of infertility is so different for every person. Kind of depending on what brings them to the table, that we would love to be as much a resource to as many people in the community as we possibly can.
Yeah, I've seen, partners that are very supportive of, my patients, partners who are not, they could care less kind of thing. I've seen the whole gambit spectrum of how partners react. I think that there are some that they don't know what to say, or they don't know what to do. They want to help. And the only thing that they can do is, oh, I can give some injections, maybe. What else can I do? Kind of thing. So I think, yeah, I think they just want to feel that, how can I help? How can I be included type of thing, besides just showing up for, retrieval day or IUI day or
Mhm.
doing some blood work, which I always find that the men folk are the worst at blood work. So they get
Yeah.
like maybe 4 tubes that they have to take. And these women
Poor
are getting like
things.
12 tubes taken out at one time, and men are passing out, and the women are like, what's wrong with you?
Going to run a marathon.
I mean, the experience in your body is so very different too, depending on
Mhm.
how you're coming to treatment. So, again, I think for some men, they just don't have any reference point for how it feels to be
Mhm.
in treatment, really.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just fundamentally, there is a layer of that they don't and maybe can't understand because, the female body, like the hormone cycle is a cycle.
Mhm.
So there is like a level of change that we're accustomed to, and men's hormones just don't operate that way. So, um, it's an apple trying to understand an orange in some respects.
Yeah, that's
But
a
that
good
doesn't
analogy.
mean that you can't try.
Right.
And sometimes you just need to hear something from someone that isn't your wife or your spouse, your partner, for the message to really sink in.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can provide that kind of support for tertiary, kind of the expanded circle as well.
Right.
Right.
Because I think some of it's about the toolbox, right? There are so many partners who are so open to being as supportive as possible in this process, and they just don't know. And when you are early in the process, you also maybe don't know, right? You don't know yet how you need your partner to show up for you or what that looks like. And so to have kind of a community of people who have been through the experience and maybe can inform a little bit to both parties, kind of what that means is beneficial.
Yeah, I also have seen patients, they call me and they would be like, "Well, can my husband, my partner come?" I'm like, "Of course he can come.
Mhm.
Totally fine." Even during COVID, we were a little like, "Just come on inside." But, wear a mask, but come inside. But they really, I think there are many that just generally want to be there, and, the patient would call me like asking kind of like in a whisper like, "Can he come in?" Of course he can. He's very welcome to
Right.
come. I've never seen a clinic say no, kind of
Right.
thing.
Bring your husband, maybe don't bring your toddler.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, not me.
Right.
Don't bring your
True, true. True is that. Many clinics don't allow children in the space, so there's that, and some
right.
clinics allow that. So it kind of really varies with the clinic. A clinic I worked at did not allow children. So when people,
Hmm.
we would set aside certain times of the day if people wanted to bring their babies back into the clinic for to see them after they
Yeah.
were born, and we always made sure that it was like a bubble. We were making sure that we didn't have
Hmm.
any active patients at the same time so that we could do that. So I always, think that's very important. We don't need little toddlers running around the waiting room for sure. Okay, so I also see that you guys have a lot of resources here too. So you guys have like articles that you guys write. People can go on your website, and I think they're really good articles. They're just another layer of support that people can go to get introduced to Cove. So I
Yeah.
encourage anybody that is interested in learning more, just go and read a bunch of these articles. They're great. I think they're great topics that you guys come up with and talk about. And it's just important that everybody has that support. I really want to thank you guys for coming to join us on the Repo Files today and telling us a little bit more about you guys and what you do and this wonderful co-family that you guys have started and this community that you're building. So thank you guys so much for coming on board. We would love to have you guys on in the future again. If you want to come on and we can just keep talking about supporting families and supporting people going through this difficult journey.
Amazing. Well, thank you
Yes.
so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Thank you for the work that you guys do in this space, your advocacy. Elizabeth, especially, good luck with her congressional run.
Yeah.
And then we did set up a promo code for your listeners as well. So if
Awesome. That would be
anyone
great.
heard this conversation and is interested and wants to give Cove a try, they can use the code REPROFILES for their first month free.
Awesome. That's amazing. Guys, get out there and do that and continue listening to the Repo Files. We'll be back next week. Thank you guys so much.